Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Welcome to Financial Issues. I'm your host, Shana Seth. Financial Issues, we are a ministry that helps to educate people about financial issues from a biblical worldview. If you are not a partner with us, we hope that you will consider becoming one, because we give you the tools that you need to be able to build and manage your own biblically responsible portfolio. We call this defunding darkness because we help you to screen out the companies in corporate America that are using shareholder dollars, that would be the dollars that you invest, and that you have legal right to as a shareholder. You're entitled to your share of the company's profits. Some of these companies in corporate America are using those dollars to fund agendas that do not line up with your Christian values. Things like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ agenda, human rights violations, and so much more. So, if you want to honor God in every area of your life, this is a way that we can help you clean up your portfolio. So consider becoming a partner today. Go to financialissues.org. So those are some of the things that we talk about on the show. We talk about our investment strategy. We have lots of partners that listen and submit questions. So we're going to get to some of those questions today. Before we do that, though, we want to mention that election season is in full swing. Seth, you want to tell everyone about our election promotion?
I'd love to, Shana. Yeah, folks, make a donation of any amount to the ministry, whatever the Lord leads you to give, and you'll get your hands on this bad boy. Really, Shana, I think the creme de la creme of all of the good items that we have here at the ministry. The No More Spineless Weasels t-shirt was a catchphrase of our founder, Dan Celia. He called the really kind of the chickens in Washington, D.C. He had another name for them from the animal kingdom, Shana, spineless weasels. So we want to let our voices be known here on both sides of the aisle. So for a donation of any amount through the November 5th, so that's election day, get your limited edition FISM Spineless Weasels t-shirt. Go to financialissues.org/donate, financialissues.org/donate. Easiest place to do it as well, Shana, is if you just go to the website, click on that banner, you'll see the Spineless Weasels t-shirt, tumbler. Just click on that and make your donation. And make sure to specify your shirt size as well. We have a limited number of sizes, so you got to make sure that you get it in before your size runs out.
Yep, Seth, and you sort of expanded on that in our last show, that spineless weasels are not only pertaining to election officials,
it's
but
exactly right, Shana.
You run the risk of becoming a spineless weasel yourself.
Yeah, please don't be a spineless weasel. Please don't sit out of this election. Please don't say, oh, you know what, both candidates just aren't good enough for me, so I'm going to do the Christ-like thing and be above that and not vote for either one. Don't do that. You're not helping anyone. You're not helping our country, and you're being a spineless weasel. So instead, be obedient and vote according to the Word of God, and wear a Spineless Weasels t-shirt while you do it. That would be a good thing to do, I think.
Yes. And, if you don't vote, you're not being a good steward. God gave us this country. It was founded on Christian principles, and you're not being a good steward of the sway that God has given you, which is to cast your own vote.
That's right.
So, in the control room, we were having some chatter about the markets, the betting markets, about the election, and the latest polls. Sam, you want to fill us in on what's going on there in the control room?
Oh, yes, indeed. That is if my phone can load here. Okay, so here you go. You got Donald Trump is up 64% to 36%. That's in the betting market. So take that with somewhat a grain of salt, but that is a good metric, because these are people that are not necessarily going with their ideological priorities, but they want to make some money, so they're actually putting their money where their mouth is. Now, as far as polling goes, there was a really interesting poll that just came out. This came from what was the most accurate pollster in 2020, according to Nate Silver. He's a renowned poll analyst. It is called Atlas Intel, and their poll, this is shocking. I've not seen anything like this season so far. Trump, according to them, is up 50.7% to Kamala Harris 47.5%. 1.6%. That's nationally. That, as I said, though, is a bit of an outlier because in the Real Clear Politics average, we currently have Harris up 0.8% nationally, but you got to remember that it's the battleground states that do matter. Trump is now up 1.2%.
They could just get rid of that pesky electoral college, which is not an official.
Yeah, well, it begs the question, why is Tim Walz saying we want to get rid of the electoral college? Well, that battleground number might have something to do with it.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Shana, that's a great reminder for people in battleground states, too. Everybody should vote, but you got to vote if you're in one of those battleground states, man. You got to do it. Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
I heard some numbers, and I don't want to get them wrong, but I will just say this, that they were talking about one of the key battleground states, and they were talking about the number of evangelical Christians who attend church on a regular basis who did not vote, did not even register to vote in the last election, being upwards of 300,000 people. And what they said was that if just 10% of those evangelical Christians had registered to vote and voted their values, the election outcome would have been totally different. So don't think for 1 minute that your vote doesn't count. Don't get discouraged and get into that mindset that the election is not going to be fair, that sides are going to cheat, and don't let that keep you home. Don't let that keep you home at all. Don't be a spineless weasel. Get out and vote. Vote your values. Well, this week in economic news, we had the report for the latest figures for the money supply, M2, in the United States, and it rose by $29.3 billion from the previous month to 21 point. It rose by $29.3 billion from the previous month to $21.054 trillion. Man, these numbers just fry my brain because $1 trillion is just it's almost unfathomable. But to think that we just throw these numbers around willy-nilly all the time is just crazy. So it said that this is the highest that the money supply has been in 17 months. 17 months. How about the highest in history? We've got a chart for you. Here to look at. And this is of M2. If we've, that's Art. Hey, Art.
Hi, Art.
Okay, there's the money supply. Okay, so look at this chart of money supply. From about 1960 to 1997, we hovered along under the $4 trillion mark. From 2000 to 2010, the money supply roughly doubled from 4 to 8 trillion. From 2010 to roughly 2020, it almost doubled again to 15 trillion. And then look what happened in just 2 years. We're talking decades here. But in just 2 years, from March of 2020 to March of 2022, the money supply exploded. And it went from $16 trillion to $22 trillion. So where'd the money come from? Well, it was created out of thin air by the printing presses of the Fed. And really, we say the printing presses, that's just kind of an analogy, I guess. They don't really print a whole lot of anything. It's just a balance sheet entry at this point. So during the COVID pandemic, the U.S. government passed approximately $4.6 trillion in stimulus. So these were those stimmy checks that everyone got. It was other stimulus that came out. Additionally, though, they say there was another $5 trillion that was allocated to broader economic support, including the unemployment benefits, those expanded federal benefits that people were eligible to get, aid to businesses and to local governments. So in addition to that, so we spent like we were in crisis. I think the reaction was an overreaction to what turned out to not be as serious as I think as everyone thought it was going to be. Shutting down the economy was the thing. It wasn't the actual COVID virus itself that did it to us. It was our response, the shutting down of the entire economy and trying to flip it back on. In addition to that, so reducing the supply of goods that were coming into the country while giving people more money to spend. So that, folks, is the very definition of inflation, too many dollars chasing too few goods. Hence, we saw that crazy inflation come in. And then, even after Biden announced on 60 Minutes that the COVID pandemic was over, the Biden administration continued to spend like we were still in crisis. $500 billion on the Inflation Reduction Act, so aptly named, on paper. In reality, they say that it's probably going to end up costing about $1.2 trillion, and which all of that money has not even made it into the money supply yet. Chips and Science Act on top of this. So, we're spending like we're in crisis, and that has created the inflation problem that we have now. Well, folks, we've got to take a break, but we hope you'll stick around. We're going to come back with wisdom from God's Word, the stewardship verse of the day, and answer some of the questions that you guys.
I was sobbing. It was a cry for prayer for God. I'm so sorry, please. So I got on the internet and I just started seeing like abortion pill reversal, and I found a hotline number. We're gonna get this started, and it's gonna seem like a lot, but it's gonna be so fast, and it's because you only have a certain amount of time left. It's gonna be okay. We got this. We're gonna try to fix this for you and make sure you're good and the baby's good. Don't worry. And when I came here, my heart was so warm. Other than Planned Parenthood, where I was very cold and I was lost, and I just felt like I could have been, it was just terrible. And to know that Compass Care could tell me something different and could reverse a medication like that, that's amazing. That somebody would go as hard as if it was their children to make sure your child is going to be alive and stay safe. So I want a lot of people to know it's possible. You can save your baby. You can reverse that abortion.
How is Timothy Plan continuing to lead the fight as you guys now enter your fourth decade of leading this fight of biblically responsible investing?
We've been too silent for too long, and we can no longer be silent. You stand up, like Ronald Reagan said, we're only one generation away from losing all of our liberty. Yeah. It has to be fought for. I wish it didn't. And you can fight for it. You don't need guns and ammunition and that. You can fight for it, especially with your dollars, because it's always about the money. And when the money starts impacting people, they start paying attention. When we launched this, they said it couldn't be done. You couldn't get competitive returns, but here we are.
What a tremendous testament of God's grace.
Go to financialissues.org/Timothy Plans to learn more about Timothy Plan.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Shana Seth. Let's get to some wisdom from the Word of God. Our stewardship verse for today comes from Proverbs 10:23. Doing wrong is like a joke to the fool, but wisdom is pleasure to a man of understanding. Sort of reminds me of that clip that we played in yesterday's show where Kamala Harris mocked God. Someone in the audience shouted out, "Jesus is Lord," and she totally made a joke of it and said, "You're at the wrong rally."
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's exactly right, Shanna. I mean, there are certain things that wise people know. You just don't joke about that. And you don't joke about the lordship of Christ, about the rule of God, about the salvation in your eternal soul. Those things are too serious. And unfortunately for Kamala, she didn't understand that. Can only pray that she would come to know the Lord Jesus Christ before it's too late, because judging by her actions, she clearly does not. But, Shanna, to a fool, they get as much pleasure out of doing wrong as they do joking around. We saw that pleasure from the crowd in that clip that we played yesterday. It's all in good fun in their mind. The righteous man understands, though, that there's great value in being wise. I think that joking around and all that's really a mark of being immature and being a fool. And we should not be that way. We should be mature and be wise as God has created us to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Shana, let's get to our question of the day here. First question is understanding the asset allocation model, specifically the other section. So it's a question that came in from Mark. He's 59 years old, and he says, "Greetings, Shana. My question is on the asset allocation models concerning that other position. What is it? So what's the best use of this other position, Shana, in the asset allocation model?"
Yeah, so you'll notice in our asset allocation models, we have a 1% weight to other in all of the models. And that is really just to allow for a category for some things that you may have, hopefully temporarily, that aren't included in your asset allocation. So if you're following our asset allocation to the model to the T and you're using the tracker, when you go and you put in your positions, you have to pick a sector to tie it to. Now, the only sectors that are going to show up in the tracker are the sectors that we suggest for the sector. So if you have a holding that you can't fit into one of our categories, you have to code it as other. So it's not a recommendation to have something other than what's in the asset allocation model, but it's a place for you to put those things while you decide what you're going to do with them and when.
Awesome. And then just kind of the last question, Shana, where do we draw the line on what type of asset we should include in our asset allocation models? I can imagine, it could get a little bit tricky when people start to wonder, okay, if other is this other, kind of category, what should I put in there? Are we talking hard assets, only liquid, real estate? What do you think? Precious metals?
Yep. So our portfolio tracker is designed for one purpose, and that's to help you manage your portfolio, to help you make good decisions about what you need to buy or get rid of in your portfolio from a diversification standpoint. So we'll suggest certain percentages in each sector, like a certain percentage in energy, a certain percentage in technology, healthcare, utilities, staples, on and on and on and on. So you have, based on the asset allocation model that you choose, you're going to have recommendations for each sector. When you put in your list of holdings, you have to code them to something. So the thing that goes in the asset allocation, in the portfolio tracker, is only your investable assets. So you don't want to put your home in there because, if you try to squeeze that in as a REIT or something like that, maybe a rental property that produces income, if you try to squeeze that in there, what happens if, and very likely it's going to make up a huge percentage of your portfolio. So what if it makes up 30% of your portfolio and we're only suggesting a 10% allocation toward that REIT category? I'm just making up these numbers. So that means that you're going to have to actually sell your rental property to properly allocate. So you keep your hard assets out of the asset allocation model. It's only your investable dollars. Don't even include your emergency funds because you're not going to be investing your emergency funds in anything. So if including your emergency funds, that's probably going to put you way over in cash. And if you're looking at the output, it's going to tell you, hey, you need to reposition some of your cash maybe into technology sector. Well, you would never invest your emergency fund into a technology stock because that's just silly. You could be forced to have to sell it quickly at a price that you may not want to sell it for if you need it for an emergency. So only your investable assets need to go in that portfolio tracker.
Very good, Shana. Thank you for that. Let's jump over to Slack here. We had a question and a comment here. Jay from Texas is asking, finding that best rates for CDs, 1 year at 4.1%, anything over 1 year is now in the threes. Should we hold money until after the election?
So if your money market account is still paying between, I'm going to guess, 4.5% and 5%, and we did put some verbiage up on the website, it's probably better just to stay overweighted in that money market. I think the window of opportunity that we had to use those CDs, we had you build probably, I don't know, a year to year and a half ago, we had you build a 2-year CD ladder where the 6-month, 1 year, 18-month and 2-year CDs rates were all over 5%. So if you did that, you've been enjoying at least a 5% yield. and you probably get to keep enjoying that yield for at least another year, but that window of opportunity is sort of closed with the Fed in a rate cutting cycle. We're seeing interest rates go down, and that specifically affects the short end of the yield curve. So that is, think short-term treasuries, think CDs, and eventually money markets will start to decline in rates as well. So I would encourage you, Jay, to go and read the partner commentary. We've been very diligent. This week has been a little bit delayed getting posted to the website, but for, 2-3 months now, we've been suggesting that you stay a little bit heavy in cash until after the election.
Awesome, Shana. A couple good comments here. Jack from Facebook hasn't needed a call in a while, which means we're doing a great job on the radio. So kudos. That's cool. Wanted to say hello. Thanks for the wonderful work you've been putting out. Keep it up. We love you. Jack, thanks for that, man. That's awesome.
Thanks, Jack. We love you too.
Yeah, that's good. And then Royce, great comment here, Shana. Speaking of the ballot box, next time you go to a store or restaurant, when you go to pay the cashier, reach into your pocket, pull out your empty palm, and show the cashier your palm. When they look puzzled, just say, "I'm paying you with joy."
Yeah.
It's delightful.
And you can take that right to the ballot box,
that's
too.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. That's good stuff. Well, over on Ask Shana here, we've got Laura, 64 years old, saying, my questions are based on the book, The Great Taking. I believe Dan had referenced this book in the past. Should we be contacting our institutions to have our stock certificates directly transferred to us? My brokerage is Fidelity, and in that account, I own some individual stocks, as well as Timothy funds and ETFs. Do you consider Timothy a safer option as far as protecting our assets from being confiscated? So really 2 questions from Laura there, Shana.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar at all with the book. I have not read it, so I can't really speak to anything that's in it. As far as having stock certificates directly transferred to you, the issue that you're going to have with that, if you hold your physical stock certificates, what happens if you want to sell it? Now you've got to go back to a brokerage. You've got to open an account. You've got to send them your stock certificates. I just think that the inconvenience outweighs the risk that's happening. Could our assets be confiscated from us in the future? Sure, they could. But, I think the Bible says a lot of things can potentially happen to us. But, what the response to that, what Jesus says over and over and over again, and other voices in the Bible say, do not be afraid, be of good courage, trust in the Lord, know that the Lord is taking care of you. So, you know what, if they take your stocks from you, if they take your money from you, they cannot take the one thing that provides true security, and that is faith in Jesus Christ.
That's well said, Shana. I mean, I think that's such a good undergirding reminder for us as we deal in the physical material world that we live in, and we're dealing with our money, understanding that, maybe the day will come where they take it all away, and that would be really bad, but that would not be the worst thing that could happen to us. And what a good reminder that we need to have our hope secured in what really matters, which is eternal life.
Absolutely. So. And, I'm not a proponent of them taking everything from us. I think it would be a very hard situation for us all to get used to, but I can tell you this, if we ain't got money to worry about, we can focus on the things that really matter.
Yeah, that's well said. That's good. Joshua's up next, Shana, 41 years old. He's in the middle of making a switch from non-BRI to BRI, has a regular brokerage account, Roth IRA. From listening to our show, I've heard mentions of what type of assets are better to have in a Roth IRA versus regular brokerage because of the growth in taxes. What types of companies or sectors should be in my Roth and in my brokerage? Thank you for taking the time to answer my questions. What do you got for Joshua?
Yeah, we should all give Joshua a big hand clap, a big round of applause for acting on his convictions to be biblically responsible. That's the thing in that comment that I key in the most on, and that's what makes me the happiest, because it's this vision of moving money out of the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light. That was the vision that the Lord kind of gave to me as I was praying through this whole question of biblically responsible investing, because money's not evil. Money is neutral. It's just a medium. It is what makes the world go round. It's what funds darkness, and it's what funds kingdom work as well. So I'm so glad to hear that Joshua is acting on his convictions there. So to answer the question specifically about which types of assets I think are better in the Roth account, so in your Roth account, you're going to get tax-free growth. So you want the things that have the potential to grow the most. So think about the most aggressive investments that you're going to buy. Those are very likely going to be in the technology sector. They could be in the healthcare sector. As you're going through and looking at the descriptions, anything that says growth or aggressive growth in the description is going to be something that you could consider. But I would definitely start with your technology stocks.
Awesome, Shana. Might have time to squeeze one more in here. Steve is 66. He noticed a commodities tab on the broad list. Is the commodities category going to be activated in the future?
No, it's actually an old category that we've kind of integrated into other sectors. So, commodities is not a huge part of our strategy. We focus on individual stocks. There are some commodities that we may introduce, but they would likely either be found, most likely be found in the materials sector. So with the new website that's coming out, that commodities tab was probably going to go away altogether. So, all right, I hear the music. That's my reminder to tell you that if you're listening on an outlet that carries the short version of the show, we hope that you know how to get the entire show. Podcast, Apple, Spotify, the best way, our phone app, and we're also on social media. For the rest of you, hang around. We're going to be back with more financial issues right after this.
It's easy to get caught up in the rush and forget about what really matters. Too often, we invest in stocks without knowing what they stand for. When your investments align with your values, your money speaks for you. Because biblical values matter, even when investing. Learn how to invest biblically and responsibly. Visit financialissues.org to learn more. That's financialissues.org.
Hi, this is Shana Seth, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Remember the good old days when companies stuck to just selling their products rather than using their profits to push an agenda? When you invest in a company, you become an owner of that company. And more businesses are now using your money to fund woke projects. We're called to be good stewards of all we have, and that includes ensuring your investments align with your biblical values. Thankfully, that's where Financial Issues can help. For over 25 years, Financial Issues has stood as a leader of biblically responsible investing, encouraging the body of Christ to keep funds out of companies that dishonor God. We provide Christian investors with the tools they need to build fiscally and biblically responsible portfolios. We're at the forefront of the fight, helping you not only with your finances, but advocating for truth and godly wisdom. For more information, go to financialissues.org. That's financialissues.org.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. evaluation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Hey, welcome back to Financial Issues, everybody. Great to be here with you. I'm taking you the rest of the way here. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Shana. Good to be here with you all. Phone lines are now open, so if you want to join the conversation, you can call in 610-363-1110. It is a joy to be here with you this October the 23rd of 2024. Hey, we mentioned earlier in the show, make sure that you give a donation to the ministry of any amount and get your hand on one of these a really fantastic piece of clothing right here and a perfect voting day wear for you. Make sure that you get your hands on it now. If you make your donation now, there's still a good chance that we'll be able to send it to you in time for Election Day. Of course, you can also wear it after Election Day as well. No matter the outcome there, we want to let our voices be heard that we're frustrated with the spineless weasels. So make your donation, financialissues.org. Just click on that donate tab there, and you can do that. We've already had several donations come in, which means that the stockpile of shirts is shrinking, so you need to get yours now. financialissues.org/donate is the place to go. The markets just opened up. So we'll take a look at what they're doing right about now. So yesterday, they were a little uneasy. Midst of earnings season in full swing, as well as some rising treasury yields, which continued to rise this morning, and the double whammy as well of the election and another Fed rate meeting on the way in now less than... They stayed close to the flat line all day, and that's about where they ended up as well. So by Tuesday's closing bell, the Dow was barely under the flat line. Same with the S&P. The NASDAQ was slightly further away from that mid-range, around 1/5% in the positive. So the lone winner was the NASDAQ. The other two were losers. Oil was creeping back up, as we said, above $72 a barrel at the bell yesterday. The markets as they sit right now, let me refresh my screen here real quickly, and then we'll see. Everything is in negative territory right now. So the Dow is down about 2/3. The S&P is down 1/3, and the NASDAQ is down 1/2. We mentioned those treasury yields continue to go up a little bit right now as they sit. The 10-year treasury is up around 4.25%. Oil, meanwhile, ticked down a little bit from its bell number yesterday. It's down around, it's less than $71 a barrel right now. So coming down a little bit from where it was yesterday at the bell. To get to some economic headlines to get to with my dear friend Samuel Case. Sam, good to have you on, buddy.
Good to see you, Seth. I mean, yes, I see you all the time. I'm in the booth. I can just look over there and say, "Oh, there he is."
Little known. I mean, Sam, I think it's fair to say the elites don't want you all to know this, but you can actually be friends with your coworkers.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that. It's crazy. Don't tell anyone.
Pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. What do we got today, Sam?
Yeah, so it's hard to believe, but Christmas is right around the corner. In case you people haven't been paying attention, I know it tends to sneak up on me, but that also means holiday spending. We're in that mode, and holiday spending, according to Fox Business, is expected to reach yet another record this year, between $979 billion and $989 billion. That's according to the National Retail Federation. Now, holiday spending, according to the Retail Federation, that will be up 3.5%, which sounds good, but it's actually the slowest rate in 6 years. There's a couple reasons for that I'll mention in just a moment, but more of this data here. Online and non-store sales are expected to account between $295 to $297 billion. That's up from $273 billion in 2023. Now, as for the slowed growth here, there's a couple reasons for that. The NRF cites a shorter shopping period between Thanksgiving and Christmas. If you look at your calendar, Thanksgiving this year comes right at the end of November, so that means you have less time between the two holidays to do the shopping. And of course, there's still the ongoing impacts of Hurricanes Helene and Milton.
Yeah, and Sam, I can't help but wonder, we saw that dock worker strike, short-lived, a couple weeks ago now it was, but I can't help but wonder if that may have some residual impacts as well. I'm sure. Yeah.
As we talked about on the show, that's the type of thing that even if it happened just a couple days, the ripple effect's going to be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff, Sam. Thank you for that. Folks, there's a couple thoughts here just that I'd like to share with you in light of this, kind of as we're coming near Christmas season and maybe you're getting ready to budget a little bit. Hopefully you've already been doing that this year for Christmas. Good stewardship of resources means certainly being wise and prudent with your money. And please take that into consideration as you prepare to shop for Christmas. At the same time, now hear me out here, I think that sometimes out of a fear that we have, a good fear, to overspend, to be foolish with our money, sometimes we end up acting stingy when we should be extravagantly generous. And oftentimes we talk about this in terms of giving to your church. I certainly wouldn't deter you from doing that. But in this context, I'm talking about getting Christmas presents for your children and grandchildren and your spouse. I would encourage everyone who's listening out there, parents, grandparents, spouses, if you have nieces and nephews, don't be afraid to spend money on your loved ones at Christmas, okay? That's a good thing. I'm not saying be extravagant. I'm not saying, be foolish with it. But I am saying this is the time of year where we remember how incredibly generous God has been with us in sending us his beloved Son. Wouldn't it be an appropriate response for us to be, possibly be a little bit more sacrificial in our spending for our children and grandchildren? I mean, I really do believe that is a good thing. I'm not saying go overboard, but don't be a Scrooge. Don't be a Scrooge. There's nothing like, I got to tell you, I have had my little ones now for 4 or 5, it'll be 5 Christmases this year since Eloise was born, and Josiah was he entered the fold in 2022, and then this will actually be the last Christmas with just the 4 of us, because next year we'll have another little one. By the way, we're having a little boy, which is pretty exciting, so it's super cool. But anyway, I've seen those little ones and the joy that they experience on Christmas morning, and it just fills my heart with joy. And it's such a picture of the gospel. They didn't earn those gifts. I spent the money on them because I love them. So don't be afraid to do that this Christmas. As believers, there's a paradox here. We're called to be both prudently wise with our money, and also, I think it's appropriate to say, extravagantly generous. And I think Christmas is a time where generosity is the right way to go. So what else do we have there, Sam, in terms of headlines before the ag here?
I was going to say, we have the ag coming up in a few minutes, but a great story we've been talking about behind the scenes a little bit, because it just goes to show the types of things we've been talking about here at Financial Issues so much over the last couple of years. And that is, we all know that Donald Trump gave a masterclass over the weekend, showing up at McDonald's, glad handing with the customers, doing the fry station, all that good stuff. Yep. But in the same way, McDonald's itself, the company, has also shown a masterclass of its own in how to release a statement, basically shutting down any of the woke nonsense that could emerge for having the big bad Donald Trump show up at one of their restaurants. They released a statement. I have a little bit of it right here. Sure. They said McDonald's does not endorse candidates for elected office, and that remains true in this next race for president. That's something we like here at Financial Issues. They said, though we're not a political brand, we've been proud to hear former President Donald Trump's love for McDonald's. We know he does love McDonald's. And Vice President Harris's fond memories working under the arches, although I should note that is somewhat disputed here. They said, upon learning of the former president's request, we approached it through the lens of one of our core values. We open our doors to everyone's. McDonald's also said that the franchise has also invited Harris and Walls to their restaurants as well.
Yeah, really, really interesting, Sam. I do think this is an excellent response. And folks, this is not a promotion. McDonald's, I checked yesterday, they're not screening clean. They're not biblically responsible. However, I think this is a great lesson in companies really truly being neutral. The difference here, I think Trump capitalized on an opportunity with a well-known household brand. Harris did not. Even from a non-BRI company, folks, what I think we're seeing here is that the movement, the message of biblically responsible investing, part of it really is we just want companies to be neutral. And McDonald's, to their credit, didn't. I really do think that they did it well. The encouragement we can take from this movement is not slowing down, folks. Be encouraged. All right, we got Craig Haugaard coming in, and then more financial issues right after this.
Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag update for October 23rd. Corn had a very solid session as the announcement of a large sale of corn to Mexico brought in speculative buying. Dry weather has resulted in a faster than normal harvest pace, but the dry weather is also impacting logistics. NOAA's river forecast is stable, but well below the low stage at Memphis for the foreseeable future. And this is resulting in very high barge freight. At the closing bell, December corn was 7 cents higher at $4.16 and a half. Soybeans are really interesting, and it appears that several exporters are short beans and are getting squeezed. That was reflected in yesterday's price action, as well as in the spread between November and January bean futures. As with corn, the Mississippi River has added cost to exports, and NOAA expects low river levels through mid-November. Harvest is advancing at a very quick pace, with 81% of the crop harvested versus 67% that's normally harvested by this date. November beans finished the day 10 3/4 cents higher at $9.91 3/4. Wheat found itself in a good old-fashioned weather market yesterday. Traders remain concerned over the impact of dry weather in Russia that's going to have on their winter wheat crop. While here in the U.S., traders were disappointed over the recent rains in Kansas. They were scattered, with the rains amounts not as large as had been hoped. As a result, Minneapolis December wheat was 2.5 cents higher at $6.16 Kansas City rose by 4 1/4 cents to close at $5.86 and we had Chicago 3 3/4 cents better at $5.76 per bushel. Cotton futures continued to shop sideways. Yesterday's close had the December futures up 11 points at 73.60. Livestock futures all showed some strength. December live cattle were $1.30 higher at $188.12 per hundredweight. January feeder cattle were $1.80 higher at $246.05, and December lean hog futures rose by 85 cents, closing out the day at $79.12 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures gapped lower and they continued to collapse. At the closing bell, November futures were down 54 points at $20.35. Well, this has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Gain valuable insights from partners sharing about financial issues.
We work so hard, all of us do, to get this money, and I knew nothing about how to use it appropriately, biblically. And the strategy is so simple. You guys are on the front line of the battle.
My wife and I have been partners with you for several years, and we have benefited greatly from your advice and your ministry.
I do nothing without following FISM's advice on stocks, and especially since it's coming from a spiritual foundation.
You are amazing. Nobody is doing what you are doing for the body of Christ.
I just wanted to call and thank you for the advice that you gave me a little over a year ago. It has panned out very well.
I've never dreamed I'd be able to give money like this.
Become a partner today by simply going to financialissues.org/join. Click the green button to become a partner today.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hey, folks, if you joined late or you caught the middle of that last segment there, you heard Sam and I talking about McDonald's statement that they released defending Trump's Sunday campaign event. And I just wanted to remind you all there, of course, this is not a promotion of McDonald's as a biblically responsible company. We're simply pointing out that it seems like we're seeing some good signs of life in the biblically responsible movement, where even non-BRI companies are adopting some of the qualities that we're promoting on this show, of companies just doing a good job, being a good business, staying neutral in the culture war. I think that's really, really good. So well done by them for sure. Not a promotion to buy them, please don't, but certainly a encouragement there to see that from more and more companies. So folks, 610-363-1110, number to call in here. A couple more quick headlines to get to here. Speaking of, being neutral and actually offering both sides of a story, interestingly enough, if you caught the show yesterday, we played a clip in the later part of the show of a recent Kamala Harris rally where someone allegedly yelled out, "Jesus is King" or "Jesus is Lord," and the current vice president proceeded to mock that person as she was promoting the abortion industry. Well, Sam, apparently a similar thing happened to J.D. Vance at a recent event of his as well. Can you tell us about this?
Oh, that is certainly true.
Yeah.
We really have a mirror image going on here. If you just want to encapsulate the huge gulf for Christians that they're facing in this upcoming election, you're right. Kamala Harris outright mocked Christians who were protesting against abortion at her rally. They said, Jesus is Lord, Jesus is King. I can't quite remember which one, but she said, hey, get out of here. You're not at the right rally.
Yeah.
But pay attention to this clip where basically the same exact thing happens to J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
Anti-Christian rhetoric and anti-Christian approach to public policy. I don't think that's right, Jesus is King, and I don't think that we've seen...
That's right. Jesus is King. And the crowd just erupts. I could have probably played that cheer for another 30 seconds or so, which is really encouraging to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really, I mean, folks, listen, the candidates speak for themselves. The candidates speak for themselves. It is up to you to be a good steward of your vote and vote according to the values of Scripture. But that's all that we'll say about it. We don't need to speak about it any further. That's good stuff. One more, Sam. Speaking of Kamala and Donald Trump as well, we've seen Kamala's stated plans for the economy, presuming that she would win the election. Sam, could you give us the details of one of Trump's plans, specifically a tax plan for the economy?
Well, and I would say to that, Seth, that's also presuming that if she gets elected, her plans stay the same, because she has a tendency to kind of flip-flop more or less on pretty much everything she says. But here's what Donald Trump's saying about his tax plan. This is according to analysis from CNBC. Trump's tax reforms, he's offering quite a doozy of them. He is planning to potentially give 100 million Americans some form of exemption on their income tax. According to their analysis, Trump's tax reforms could offer at least partial income exemptions for approximately 93.2 million Americans, which frankly would be pretty cool if that were true. The plan includes ending taxes on tips and Social Security, and could also end taxes for firefighters, police, and those in the military. Now, we know that he's talked quite a bit about ending taxes on tips and Social Security. It's that second bit about tax relief for firefighters, police, and those in the military. That's kind of more of an up in the air idea as of right now. And you should take all of this with a grain of salt, because it is still campaign season. So things are prone to change if Trump gets elected, and see what he can actually get through with Congress. Trump says all this revenue, because this would create a revenue gap from the tax income. He claims that this is going to be made up for with his tariffs. Trump has recently proposed a 20% tariff on all imported goods into the U.S. That's regardless of what country they come from, and specifically a 60% tariff specifically from goods coming from China. I believe he's probably going to make good on that China promise, although the 20% on all tariff goods, I could see that definitely changing if he actually becomes president.
Yeah, definitely. Good stuff there, Sam. Thank you. Folks, make sure that you keep in mind as we are, looking at these different policies, specifically with taxes. Remember what Shana says often, that likely what's going to happen is taxes will be higher in the future than they are right now. That's just the way taxes work, unfortunately. With the economic policy, again, we're looking for the lesser of two evils here. And some of it is, Sam, you're exactly right. We're going to have to wait and see actually what whichever candidate who ends up in the office ends up following through with their promises there. It's going to be very interesting to see. Folks, I was
going to say, with Trump, though, we do have the past record. So we do know that we're going to get some sort of tax cut, because we had that when he was president. You also know you're going to get some kind of tariffs. So because we had that when he was president, so you already have something built upon what we had in the past. Same thing with Kamala Harris, too. She's basically said that she's not going to do anything different from President Biden. So more of what you're getting right now.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll be keeping an eye on that for sure, folks. Sam, I appreciate that so much. Sam, let's get to a partner question here. I know we have the first one from James. What does James have for us today?
Yeah, hang on just a second. Let me get James right up here.
Being
a little technologically illiterate.
Yeah, let me real quick just let you all know that the markets as they sit still all negative. The Dow has cooled back a little bit. S&P same place, same with the NASDAQ also, as those treasury yields keep on going up there.
There you go, Seth. You just saved my bacon right there. I do have James now. So James says this: as a premillennialist, I believe that between now and the tribulation, prophecy dictates that Israel will become safe and prosperous. Believing prophecy, I believe we can support Israel and preserve our finances on this truth. Maybe we are raptured prior to their economic rise, but that's okay. I would like to invest in Israeli stocks. What do you think about specifically recommending a list of Israeli companies? What do you think, Seth?
Well, it's a good thought, James, and I appreciate that question. Let me give you a few things to consider here. So we actually do have a recommendation of sorts for investing in Israel, and I'll pull back the curtain just a little bit here. It's in the form of the Israel Common Values Fund. That is a Timothy Plan mutual fund that's currently on our buy list right now. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that, absolutely. Art Alley and I actually talked on the air last week about this a little bit. That fund did take a pretty big hit in the original October 7th attacks about a year ago, but it has come back pretty nicely. It's most heavily focused on investing in companies based out of Israel. So that would be really where I would direct you, James, if you're looking for, what you'd said about specifically recommending that list of Israeli companies. Those mutual funds are connected to a bunch of different Israeli companies. So I think that'd be a good place for you to look at. Now, a word of clarification here, James, and this is not an attack on you, James. I don't believe that you, meant what I'm about to say by this, but I think it's important for me to mention it as well. I think it's prudent for us to remember, folks, that our first and only standard of investing in companies is whether they are biblically responsible. And I say that, our TV audience, you can see behind me, I got an American flag and an Israeli flag behind me. We support Israel at this ministry. However, there are many Israeli companies that are not biblically responsible. There are many companies that claim to be Christian companies, for heaven's sakes, that are not biblically responsible. That is our final standard. Our only standard is whether they are biblically responsible. We fully support Israel, but we will not support a company simply because they are an Israeli company. We will not do that. They must be biblically responsible. They must be. So in the final analysis, folks, that's the standard that matters most. James, the good news for you, we mentioned that Israel Common Values Fund. Timothy Plan is committed. Timothy Plan is committed wholeheartedly to being biblically responsible. They will not promote a fund that is not biblically responsible. So you can be confident that getting the best of both worlds with that one. It's an Israel-backed mutual fund that is also biblically responsible. So that's where I'd tell you to go, James. I hope that helps. That's a good question. What else do we have, Sam, with the time that we have left?
Yeah, I think we can sneak in Carol Lee here. She says, good morning, Shana and Seth. Oh, I don't get a good morning. I'll say good morning to Carol Lee. How you doing, Carol Lee? She says, I have an account with the Christian Community when Dan was recommending them. Seems like y'all had some kind of alternative to that particular credit union, and I could not remember what that was. Thank you, and God bless.
Carol Lee, it's great to hear from you. I hope you and Nelson are doing great, and appreciate that question there also. So the answer to your question is no, we do not have an alternative option from CCCU. There are several good credit unions out there, actually, and CCU is certainly one of them. None that we officially promote on the show, though. So our advice for you is pretty simple, kind of common sense. Just pick one that you would trust, and one that you can also develop a good relationship with. The cool thing about credit unions is a lot of them are locally based, which is great. So that way you can kind of get to know the people who are there. It's not like they're from some big corporation based out of Wall Street. They are people in your community that you know, that you can know, and they can know you. And if things happen in the community, they're kind of aware of it and things like that. And I think that could be a good thing. Also, make sure to pick one that has insurance on your account, normally up to $250,000. Credit unions are not backed by the FDIC like banks are. So you got to make sure that the one you choose has an equivalent insurance. Most of the good ones do. Just make sure that you do your research on it. I think Christian Community Credit Union has a note at the bottom of its website that says which insurance it has, and it's equivalent to the FDIC, $250,000 per account per owner. So that's what I would just tell you there, Carolee. If there's not that insurance, it'd be prudent to look elsewhere. From the limited research we've done, Carolee, CCU continues to be great. We don't look at as closely at them as we used to, since we're no longer corporately related in that way. But we still, from what we can see, we love Christian Community Credit Union. We think that they're a great place to do banking with. Absolutely. Folks, banking is really one of those things that can really be a personal preference preference. We like credit unions a lot for various reasons, but you can't go wrong with, a good bank as well, as long as you do it right, just like we had said there, pretty much those same parameters that we put in there. So, Carolee, I hope that's helpful for you. And again, it's great to hear from you. And all of you, I appreciate you joining us today on the show. An important time here, folks, in our country. We have an election coming up in less than 2 weeks. So I do hope you're preparing to steward your vote well. On tomorrow's show, we'll talk a little bit about. We might have a couple of good old-fashioned Dan rants lined up for you. It's going to be a good time tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm Seth Udinsky, and I hope you'll remember that everything you have belongs to the Lord. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with it. God bless you all. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.